Can you tell me about your favorite thing about school?
Ooh, that's really hard. I love everything about school. It's going to be hard to just pick one. I really like math. It's my favorite topic at school.
Does your school make you feel more connected to your community?
Yeah, a lot more connected.
Can you give me an example of how it makes you feel more connected to your community?
Yeah, sure. It's like, so if me and my friend are playing at school, and then after school we go to the park, and then we're like, oh, remember what we did today? That's like, it's easier to start a conversation, and it also just, you get to spend more time with friends. I mean, it makes sense that almost everybody I know is from my school.
Welcome back to Community by Design. I'm Jay Harrison. This episode is all about schools, a key part of our social infrastructure. In particular, we're going to focus on how students, parents, and teachers use the infrastructure of schools to create havens for groups in our community who benefit from having access to safe spaces where they can build belonging and social capital. Waterloo Region has a diverse public education system that includes 2 main English language school boards and a French language school board. There are almost 100,000 students across the region. To understand how schools act as social infrastructure, we reached out to one of our community's foremost experts on education, Laura Mae Lindo. She's an assistant professor of philosophy and director of Black Studies at the University of Waterloo. She's also the former member of provincial parliament for the Kitchener Centre riding and no stranger to conversations about social infrastructure. When I asked her about schools as social infrastructure, she started by pointing out something fundamental. Schools are inherently political spaces.
The development of the school, sure, it's to teach you things and help you to grow and help you to become better and good and all of this kind of stuff. But there are assumptions about who should be in those spaces, what they look like, what they learn. There's political systems that dictate what you learn. Like literally your curriculum is determined by a political institution. And so that also means that when things go sideways outside, that's going to have an impact on what happens inside.
So the distinction between schools and the community is sometimes blurrier than we expect, in part because students are learning and growing in the community as well as in schools.
So the kids are sometimes asking for things sooner than we as the adults outside anticipate because they're experiencing things that are different than what we anticipated them experiencing at that age. So those things start to blur. And those are the moments where they don't find what they need to learn or what they're asking for inside the school system. They look outside. So of course, the school becomes part of that social fabric. That's the social infrastructure.
This blurring between school and community life has always existed and is often a part of a student's school experience.
And I remember like a long time ago, not too long, don't want to lose my youthful glow. But when I was in school, it was a big deal to have community members come into the school. Like it was a big deal to have your parents come and read stories or to have community members. I remember his name was Michael Robertson and his mommy taught us all how to make ice cream. And she would come in year after year and teach us how to make ice cream. And you think like, well, who cares? Were you learning whatever? We were learning community. We were learning that ice cream, even when you're going to go buy it at the store, there's somebody out there that's figuring out how to make it. You were learning something different from that. And we were getting to know other adults in the neighborhood that would be sort of safe for us in that neighborhood if something went wrong. And so that was a big deal.
Classroom encounters with community have always been part of school life, but the concept of social infrastructure offers a new lens, a way to be more intentional about these connections.
I think that there has always been a sense of that notion of social infrastructure I find so fascinating because it's how we've lived in these spaces. We've just never really thought about it that way. So then that means that if we start to understand what social infrastructure can bring to our communities, then we can start to reimagine what we're doing inside. So like holy opportunities, Batman. And I think that that's the other piece of social infrastructure. Like when you start to understand social infrastructure and put it into practice, there's this intentionality.
That intentionality creates a different kind of vision of schools and of community life.
I'm not bringing in parents just because we've always brought in parents. I'm bringing in parents because that's how I build community, because I want the young people to know that we're, as a collective, we're here for them. At the end of the day, if my kids are outside playing and something bad is happening, I want somebody there who sees it to step in. So whatever we want to call that, I want to build that kind of relationship with people so that we feel like we can care for each other. And that microcosm that gets created inside our schools at all of the different grade levels provides us with more opportunities to sort of bridge that. That care and that compassion gets built in the school and then carries over sort of outside of the school too.
In this episode, we wanted to highlight a specific way that the infrastructure of schools is being used as a space to build havens for community members from minoritized groups. What's a haven? Here's a starting point from the Gell Institute, a group that has inspired the local conversation about social infrastructure here in Waterloo Region. They describe havens, a type of social infrastructure, as spaces for people to gather around shared identity to build bonds within groups that need a safe communal space, such as people from historically marginalized backgrounds who have lacked spaces to gather. But the concept of havens, and social infrastructure for that matter, are open for discussion and debate. Laura Mae had her own concerns with the concept of havens.
So that's fascinating. And there's no point in having a conversation without being super uber honest. And when I hear the word haven, I actually don't feel comfortable. Isn't that weird? I think the reason it's not sitting with me well is because there's a false sense of security that comes with the word haven. And I understand theoretically why that would be a word that is being used in that context. I get that. But I feel like there's a space inside the conversations around social infrastructure that allows for tension. And this notion of haven is like a timeout from that, where I create a sense of safety that may not actually exist in the world. So unless within those spaces I'm developing a skill set, or really taking a time out, like for realsies, that gives me that space, then perhaps that would make me feel better. But my gut reaction to the word was actually not near as pleasant as I thought it would be, because the word itself is lovely. Is there a need for a space where people can just sort of time out and like regroup? Absolutely. I don't know what they would call that space, and perhaps that's a space that they should be naming and I shouldn't. The students are going to create the spaces that they want. Community will create the spaces that they want. They may not name it. They're just going to do the thing. But I do often take seriously how the people that are impacted by the thing are feeling about the names, because it's easier for us when we're not experiencing any of those hardships to make up a name that makes sense for us and be like, that's what that is. And they might be calling it who knows what. They might be calling it a name, like we're in a community with so many newcomers. It might be a name from their own home that they're calling that. Right? So I might label it, not me, but somebody might label it a haven, and they might label it something else.
The tensions of community life are, in some ways, what makes it interesting. As Laura Mae points out, a community conversation about social infrastructure should include space for disagreement, and her reaction to the concept of havens opens an opportunity for us to consider whose voices and experiences are heard and reflected when we're talking about social infrastructure. How do people talk about their experiences with the building blocks of community? Let's start with schools. Up next, we'll hear from a student and a parent who are using schools to create opportunities for bonding, mutual aid, and support. Whether we call it havens or not, or something else entirely, students are using the infrastructure of the school to create the spaces and organizations that they need to thrive. You may have heard of GSAs before. GSAs, which stands for Gender Sexuality Alliance, are student-led school groups that offer a sense of community and safety for LGBTQ students and their allies. In a 2021 census of Waterloo Region District School Board students, nearly 1 in 4 middle school and high school students identified as LGBTQ. Quinn Palmer is a student leader of the GSA at local high school Waterloo Collegiate Institute. She told us about the importance of a space like this.
We have an amazing connection to each other with community, and we always support each other when something happens. And it's just a really nice space where we can all get together and support each other. And anyone can be a member. Queer students can be a member. Allies can be a member. Anyone.
The members of the GSA build community through support and public events.
With WCI GSA, we always support each other. It's always nice to meet new people and introduce everyone to each other when we run events, and helping everyone. For example, if there's someone who's recently come out as queer, we can support them. We have resources. We have a whole bunch of different things, getting them into community events and helping them with anything they need.
Spaces like this are important because LGBTQ students are disproportionately exposed to prejudice and the negative consequences of that. When we asked Quinn what would be different if the GSA wasn't at WCI, her answer was stark.
Well, unfortunately, at a lot of schools, there's a ton of anti-LGBTQ hate, which is a big problem nowadays. But if WCI GSA was not there, we wouldn't have a space for our queer students and allies to be there and support each other. So it would just be a lot less fun, and we wouldn't have our amazing events that we do, and it would just potentially have other consequences, like other adverse mental health outcomes for queer students, which, as we know, community is everything.
The GSA at WCI is one of the larger groups in the region, and although it has been around for many years, Quinn noted that it really took off in 2022 when she joined the group. Every year, they run events for the school community.
So we this year we ran our GSA Trans Day Visibility celebration in March. We also ran the Trans Day of Remembrance celebration in November. And also this year, our highlight of this year, we ran WCI Pride. So we included a bunch of different schools from our board. It was a lot of fun.
Quinn stressed the importance of teacher sponsors, adults who support the work students are doing without taking over.
For clubs, you need at least one teacher to be there to supervise a club, but our teachers do much more than that. They help us run events, they help us when something happens, and they connect with other teachers.
The GSAs in the region also come together for an annual conference run by a community organization called OK to Be Me.
So we have different speakers from we do different workshops, we have a community space, we have presentations, we have food. It's just a day where and there's also a free space, so you could go to different stations set up, and it's an amazing event everyone can be themselves, and it's very nice.
Laura Mae Lindo watched a similar student-led movement emerge across Waterloo Region when students started building Black student associations at local schools.
When I was still a member of provincial parliament, it was the first time I had ever seen Black student associations in high schools. I've never seen that before. And so I did this celebration of them, and now they're massive.
What's remarkable about the Black Students Associations, Laura Mae explains, is how they started, completely grassroots, driven by students.
Right after the big, huge march that was happening downtown Kitchener, protesting police violence, these students just started asking for space. And a bunch of teachers were like, I don't know what to do to support these students. We're just going to do whatever they want us to do. So they would book rooms for them. And then all of a sudden it was like this, literally, I would argue it was from the kids up. It was like this grassroots movement within the school system with these young people.
The public school board saw that the students were asking for spaces like this and created a program called Black Brilliance with over 200 students across the board participating. They visit universities, attend an annual Black Brilliance conference, and support one another. But Laura Mae is clear about the difference between student-led spaces and adult-led ones.
When it's a movement, like when it's the students that are saying, but this is what community means to me, this is what I need, it's a very different kind of thing that develops. There are certain spaces that we, as the grown-ups in the room, we already sort of have a preconception of what that space should do, who should be there, what kinds of activities are they participating in, especially within the school. And I find sometimes it's disconnected from community, which is not what the students are asking for.
Laura Mae gives an example of how students are looking to be connected to the community. In the spring of 2025, GSA students took action alongside other community members when a motion was tabled at the Catholic School Board to ban flying the Pride flag and other identity-based flags at schools.
Some of those students that were part of the GSA were going and doing delegations at the board. And they were talking in their delegations about what it means to be part of this community, not just in the school, but outside. The kids were like, no, what happens outside and what makes us part of this community outside has to be reflected inside. So it was wild to see these young people doing delegations. Like, I was much older when I realized what a delegation even was. Right? But these kids are like, now we're on it.
Student-led spaces aren't the only havens being created in schools. Parents, too, are building connections and support systems that bridge school and community life. This is particularly important for newcomers to Canada who are navigating an unfamiliar school system, often without English as a first language. Our reporter Karen spoke with Danny, a parent at a Kitchener public school, about how community amongst parents can emerge organically.
I'm coming from another country, but this is the first time being part of the school community. And it feels great. At the beginning, it feels a bit awkward having the same small talks over and over, and it's hard to get to the point to trust a bit the other people. But then when you get past to that point, then it's very rewarding. But the only thing is that you need to put the intention and the time to get to know the other people. And if you are genuinely interested in be part of the community, then it's very rewarding.
In 2021, students in the Waterloo Region District School Board identified with over 200 different ethnic and cultural origins and spoke more than 200 different languages as their first language. Taarini Chopra, a parent from King Edward Public School, a primary school in Kitchener, was surprised to learn about the diversity of languages in her school community.
We were chatting at a school council meeting one time, and admin, the principal and vice principal at our school, happened to have just gotten this summary of all of the languages in our school. And they just, kind of matter-of-factly passed it around. And that list had 22 languages on it, which kind of just blew my mind. Like, that's just such incredible diversity to have in a school of 300, at the time, 370 kids.
This revelation came right after teachers had shared that they were having trouble communicating with parents who don't have English as a first language. The two things came together, and an idea was born.
We started thinking there's got to be some way here to both celebrate this incredible diversity, but also come up with some way of sort of supporting folks who are usually both new to Canada, unfamiliar with the school system, and who perhaps don't have English as their first language, sometimes all three things, sometimes some combination. And so that's where this idea was born, that instead of, teachers are limited in what support they can provide. And of course, all teachers don't have the languages that they need, but our school community does.
The solution was a parent-led program where parent volunteers would offer language support to other parents.
So it's voluntary. You're choosing to share your information. Where we collect a list of volunteers who speak different languages. So, for example, I sign myself up. I'm a Hindi speaker, and I say I would be happy to support anyone who would like some Hindi support, or who has come from India and doesn't know what on earth is happening in the Canadian school system, because it is very different. And we then will call out for people who want that support, and we'll see if we can pair families up. So it's families supporting families.
The response was immediate and enthusiastic.
We really didn't know how it would go. We put the call out and we got 40 volunteers within the first week. So that kind of got everyone excited. We felt like, okay, there's something here. And so we kind of kept going. We now have a list of 50 volunteers who I think between them speak 28 languages.
The program has successfully paired several families, but Taarini and her team quickly realized they faced a fundamental challenge.
The barrier to reaching those families who need language support is, of course, reaching out to them in the language in which they are comfortable, right? This is the biggest barrier for folks coming into the Canadian school system, is that communications are in English. There's this stream of information coming at you. It's not super accessible. It has a built-in translation device, but you have to do 4 different clicks and a login to get there. So it's like you got to be committed to possibly do it 4 times a week, possibly on a device that you're sharing with other members of your family. I mean, I don't think I would ever do it, so I can't expect anyone else to.
To solve this problem, the team plans to use their volunteers to translate materials into multiple languages and send them home on paper. They're also working more closely with teachers to identify families who might benefit from the program. The program has since evolved beyond just language support, as the parents learned more about how they could support one another.
We actually had to change the name after the first couple months, so now it is a very wordy Cultural Connections and Language Support, CCLS, program, because we realized that connecting with others, that cultural connections piece was just as important, if not more, than the language support piece.
The program has spawned several initiatives. One of the most creative is called Share a Story.
We asked our volunteer group, would any of you like to read a story in your language and English, so a bilingual story ideally, and we record it, and we're building up a little audio library of these stories in eventually maybe 28 languages, right? Because that's the pool that we've got. And we have, this just started a couple months ago. We've already got, I think, 10 or 12 stories. And they're just really fun to listen to. I speak Hindi. I have read out a couple stories. They're the ones that are my kids' favorites. And what I'm hoping is that your kid will someday in his classroom hear this story. And my kid, instead of having to kind of shush up that we speak this other language at home, can be like, hey, that's my mom. That's cool, right? Like that's something I can own and be proud of. And my friend in class can hopefully take on that positivity from it.
The stories are just the beginning. Parents are now planning to come into classrooms to read, teach a few words in their language, and share something about where the language comes from. The program has also led to funding for a diverse book library and plans for cultural events at the school. Taarini reflects on the deeper impact of what they're building.
For me, the biggest one is to do anything we can as a parent and school community to increase how the sense of safety, belonging, and celebration that kids feel in that building. We want our kids to feel comfortable in that, to celebrate that, not to be trying to sort of mesh themselves into what they see to be the majority, especially if they're new to Canada or new to our school, and that we have to find ways to celebrate that diversity that exists and to have kids be proud of what it is that they do at home, whether that's dinner, whether that's a festival, whether that's songs they sing, languages that their parents speak when relatives call from home.
When asked why schools are a good place for a program like this, Taarini's answer was immediate.
Because it's a landing place, right? It's the default landing place, of course, for kids. And whether you feel safe, whether you feel welcomed, whether you feel like you belong, those are all things that your school community and the atmosphere and the space that's created in that building is going to determine. So I think it's like a key space to do that for our kids. But I think what often gets left out of that picture when we think about schools is adults. The families who are behind those kids, who are often trying to navigate within a few months their kids coming home with more English than they have, or feeling like there's a disconnect between what they know, where they've come from, and what their kids are doing. English is one of my first languages, so I don't have a language barrier. And I was still completely befuddled sending my kids to a Canadian school, right? I never went to a Canadian school. I have never sent kids to a Canadian school before the first time I sent my older kid. And it took me I feel like I'm still learning all these basic things. So then I put myself in the shoes of someone who is also navigating those extra steps. And I feel like, yeah, it's probably the central place if you have kids that you end up working through some of these challenges and figuring it out how to land.
In this episode, we've heard from students, parents, and educators about the spaces they're creating within the infrastructure of schools that support groups to form greater social capital. From Quinn's GSA to Taarini's language support program to the Black student associations that Laura Mae described. These spaces share something in common. They are built by people who know that they are missing something, and they are leveraging the infrastructure of the school to create what they need.
There's no cookie cutter method to build social infrastructure or to be engaged in social infrastructure in a meaningful way. The goal is to pay attention to what's happening in your community and build accordingly.
Quinn's advice for anyone running a GSA echoes this idea.
Connect with people and don't try to do it all alone. That does not typically end well. Connect with other community members, other GSA student leaders, other community groups like OK to Be Me, and always just make sure that you're just taking care of yourself as well. But it's just really important to be there for people and also be there for yourself.
Taarin's experience shows that the barriers to connection often aren't as insurmountable as they might seem.
It wasn't super onerous, honestly, which is really lovely. There wasn't a big infrastructural or administrative barrier there for a program like this because it is parent-run. Right, admin can't collect that information, they can't share that information, they can't make that decision for other parents, but we can. We can say, hey, do you want to participate? Do you want to do the call out? And people do. We just have so much interest. People were so excited to just be able to connect with others in the community and help.
Schools are clearly not just buildings where learning happens. They're spaces where young people and families can find belonging, build connections, and create the kinds of supportive communities that help everyone thrive.
Social infrastructure isn't just what happens in a park. It's also what happens within these systems that are traditionally run in a particular way. Then it lets us start to shift what we're doing in there. That's like a really big opportunity for us to really learn what it is to be in relationship with each other and to learn and grow in this community. I think if I was going to define social infrastructure, I would say it's a decision to become intentional with the creation of community. I would say it is a decision to become intentional with centering care and relationship building in community, in all of the spaces that become part of that community. And so who is here and what do we need and how do we get to gather? And how can we help each other? And how can we ensure that everybody is seen, felt, and heard? Does it mean we all agree? No. But how do we navigate disagreements from a space of care? And I don't think it's something that just sort of is built and then done. I feel like it's something that because we're being intentional, we're always building and growing. And as things are shifting, we're building new things, and it's a creative endeavor. It's kind of exciting.
Thanks for joining us on Community by Design. Thanks to our guests on today's show, Laura Mae Lindo, Quinn Palmer, and Taarini Chopra. Coming up next time, we consider the role of local media in keeping a community connected. You can enjoy all episodes of this show by visiting midtownradio.ca or downloading the Midtown Radio app. Community by Design is produced by me, Jay Harrison. Our roving reporter is Karen Atkins. This episode was written by myself and Karen and edited by Darren Atkins and Srijit Ramaswamy. The music in today's show was from Rocket Jr., Par Hagstrom, and Loyer, courtesy of Epidemic Sound. Our executive producer is David Harms. This show was made possible by the support of the Waterloo Region Community Foundation and listeners like you. Visit midtownradio.ca to hear more local programming and find out how you can contribute to uplifting local musicians and community voices.